Daredevil is not a superhero most people probably think about. I would say, in fact, without the outstanding TV show, most people wouldn't even know that he exists. To normal comic readers, Daredevil is just a blind guy who runs around in a costume and beats up people in Hell's Kitchen. But he's much, much more. In fact, I would argue that he's one of the greatest written characters in all of fiction. In this video, I'll be switching between referencing the TV show and Frank Miller and John Romita Jr.'s Daredevil run. To start off, before I go and talk about the comic book and the TV show, I just want to talk about the character of Daredevil. Daredevil, or better known as the lawyer Matt Murdock, was always a C-list superhero ever since his first appearance in his own magazine in 1964. He was created by the late legend Stan Lee and Bill Everett. It wasn't until Frank Miller picked up the book at issue 158 that Daredevil became what we know now. The TV show takes a lot of inspiration from Man Without Fear, which is a 1993 story of Daredevil by Frank Miller and John Romita Jr. Frank Miller really elevated Daredevil's character. I would go so far to say that Frank Miller is the savior of Daredevil's character. One of my favorite parts of Matt's character is that he's a deeply flawed human and basically a walking contradiction. He's a lawyer, but he's also a vigilante, a blind man who can see better than any sighted man in existence. He's a devoted Catholic, just as the devil. He believes in compassion and mercy, but has a really clear lust for violence. And it's really refreshing to have a character who's this close to a normal human being, but still risks his life for what he believes in. He has so much inner conflict, it's actually astounding. He's what I argue, and bear with me here, one of the most relatable characters ever. Him and Spider-Man are the reason I like street-based superheroes as much as I do, more than characters like Superman. Summertime in the Manhattan neighborhood of Hell's Kitchen, the days are bright and hot and full of mischief, and the nights are cold and restless, with the hum of the city calling out to this boy, Matt Murdock, calling to him, promising him something that he cannot understand yet. I love this first panel. It's not too deep or anything, but it hooked me completely, with the foreshadowing of Matt's fate and explaining his situation perfectly. 2 pages later, Matt steals a police officer's baton. Now rereading this, I find it funny how Matt's mask is covered up in every place but his eyes. Also, John Romita Jr.'s art is so good, and it fits the story so well. The boy's heart feels like it's going to explode. It's a great feeling. But Dad would be really sore if he found out what Matt's done. So Matt takes his nightstick to his favorite place, a place that smells of sawdust and old sweat, the gym. You can almost hear the crowd cheering on their champion, battling Jack Murdock, Matt's dad. He was the best in his day. Matt and his dad have a great relationship in the comic, but we never really get to see this in the show before Matt gets blinded. While they do have a great relationship, these 3 panels really sum up his home life. Matt's dad has been forced to work for the mob after they threatened Matt's life. There are 3 times Jack Murdock does not hate himself. Only in the ring, only in the heat of combat when his fists are sure and his legs are strong, and he feels himself again, and forgets the way he spends his days. Only in the heat of it when he is a warrior, not a mob enforcer, when he's a champion and not a thug. Even though Jack Murdock is really used as a device to propel Matt's character forward, these panels are really great for explaining his character, and really give him a character of his own. We owe it to your mother, Matt. You've got to be something special. You got to be nothing like me. This creates a great parallel between Matt and Jack. Matt did go on to be something special, as we'll get into later, becoming a lawyer from a respected law firm. But deep down, he's just like his dad. A few weeks later, Matt is tired of getting bullied by the other kids and fights back. Matt Murdock proves to be his father's son. Matt goes home and tells Jack, and Jack hits him. Something never expected from Matt nor the reader. Then Dad is all in tears and regret, and Matt is running from their home through the city, directionless and lost. He hit me. The thought is so big, so crazy. Dad hit me. It was wrong. Dad was wrong. And if Dad can be wrong, anybody can do bad things. Anybody at all. Somewhere in a long and lonely night, the boy's course is set. He'll study the rules. He will study the law. When I first read this story, I thought it wouldn't really hold up on a reread after I was finished with it. But I was wrong. It gets even better. The foreshadowing of Matt's future, or as portrayed in the early story as destiny, is portrayed amazingly. Not only did he study the laws, he studied the Bible, becoming a devoted Christian. It was a costly choice. Every night he had to answer to the taunts of the other kids. The worst of it is the nickname they gave him, Daredevil. Reckless and daring, flying Matt Murdock. Recess becomes purgatory. Matt does not fight. He obeys the rules, and they still chant. We cut to Matt's favorite place, the gym. Endless stolen hours at the bag, and unnoticed by Matt, someone observes and waits.
Who is it? Maddie? Get out of my way! Get out of my way!
Don't move. Help is coming, kid.
Manny, don't move, okay? No, just don't move. Somebody get us some help!
Your boy, he pushed me out of the way. He saved my life.
Dad. Oh, it burns.
Close your eyes, Manny. Close your eyes.
Dad.
Close your eyes.
I can't see.
The TV show for Daredevil starts off like this. A boy, reckless, fearless, daring, saving an old man from being ran over. But in the end, was it really a good decision? But it doesn't matter, as Matt's fate has been sealed. He's blind, a disability that most people fear, as eyesight is one of the most important things that you need in your life. Or so Matt thought. Everything hurts. All he wants to do is die. But he doesn't die, so he has to make do. What happened to him? What has he become? Dad doesn't understand, nobody understands, except the woman, the stranger who comes. Something hard dangles from her neck. It's a cross made out of gold. No offense to anyone, but if I woke up blind, please shoot me. I can't live like that. But these sets of panels are really amazing. He doesn't die, so he has to make do. Pig is a great example early on of Matt's willpower, and is another reason why I like him so much. Before we continue with the comic, I want to talk about the scene very early on in the show.
It's been too long since my last confession. My dad, he used to come to this church back when I was a kid. He was a fighter, old school boxer. Lost more than he won, had a 24-31 record before he... But he could take a punch. Jesus, he could take a punch.
Language?
Sorry, Father. Yeah, guys he went up against used to say I was like hitting oak. Yeah, nights when he was outmatched, my dad's strategy was to let him hit them till they broke their hands. He never got knocked out, my dad. Knocked down, sure, but he always got back up. He was always on his feet when he lost. Every now and then, though, every now and then he'd get hit and something inside of him would snap. My grandmother, she was the real Catholic. Fear of God ran deep, you'd have liked her. She used to say, be careful of the Murdock boys. They got the devil in them. And you'd see it sometimes. In the ring. His eyes would go dead. And he'd start walking forward real slow. Hands at his sides like he wasn't afraid of anything. And the other guy, he'd see that look and he'd try and get away from him. My dad, he'd catch him and trap him in the corner. Let the devil out. And I didn't understand it, you know. What he was feeling deep inside, I didn't understand it. Not back then.
But you understand it now? Perhaps this will be easier if you tell me what you've done.
I'm not seeking penance for what I've done, Father. I'm asking forgiveness for what I'm about to do.
This is one of my favorite scenes in all of fiction. The slowly panning camera, the outstanding acting and portrayal of Matt from Charlie Cox, and the very clear theme of redemption, all done to a point where I can't badmouth it at all. How Matt talks to the father about Jack is amazing and is really what hooked me on the show. And the pausing before selected sentences, which tells you Matt is talking from his heart, and the tears slowly going down his face are great additions to an already perfect scene. I watched the show when it first came out with my mom a year or two before I read the comic, and man, I am glad I am re-experiencing both of them. Since we're talking about different scenes from the comic, I want to talk about one of my favorite moments in all of fiction. And for that, we have to switch to Superior Iron Man. Trust me, I'm not deviating videos. We're still talking about Daredevil. Just stay with me. Iron Man and a recently transferred Daredevil are in a conflict, so to speak. To sum up everything, Iron Man has no more superhero moral compass due to the events of Axis, a Marvel event where all superheroes became bad guys and all villains became good guys. And at the end of the event, everyone got blasted with a blast that was supposed to switch them back, but Iron Man shielded himself, so he's still a quote-unquote villain. But he isn't really a bad guy, so to speak, as Tony was kind of always a dick before the event, so it basically just removed any aspect of being a superhero from him. So, Tony is basically cyber-drugging everyone in San Francisco by giving them an app that makes them beautiful for a day, before they have to pay $100 a day to use it. This causes Daredevil to confront Iron Man, and in the fight, he basically loses, and at the end of it, Tony's like, I have something for you. And then he wakes up and he has his sight back. He sees his legs, then his costume. I couldn't imagine being blind since you were a child, relying and strengthening your other senses to the point you just don't need sight just to get it back. You can see the floor you're walking on, the people you love, and the sky. The greatest part of this moment for me is his reaction. It's a very real moment, and you can tell he's conflicted about it, as Tony's not doing this out of the kindness of his heart. He's doing this to persuade Matt to his side. Matt does get angry, but the best part in this whole comic, in my opinion, is with the time he has to see. He doesn't sit outside and reminisce like I thought he was going to do. He flies back to Hell's Kitchen and sees Foggy Nelson, his best friend since high school. I haven't talked about Foggy yet, mainly because I wanted to talk about him in this context first. But Foggy is really Matt's only friend because, he's blind and everything. And it would suck for anyone not knowing what your friend looks like. Because Matt can see, but he uses his hearing and his other senses, so he can't truly see in detail what people's faces look like. It's an amazing scene, and also Superior Iron Man is definitely worth a read. Fast forwarding a bit, all you really have to know is that the man that was watching Matt was a man named Stick, and he's basically like a blind ninja. The nights are the best. When Matt wakes up before dawn, and Stick is always there, and they dance, unseen. This is my favorite spread of all time. Now, I know that's saying a lot, but art-wise, it looks so beautiful and is backed up by later stuff in the story, and the build-up to here makes it one of my favorite spreads ever. And the only one in contention is the one later on in the story that I'll get to. Jack is forced to throw one of his boxing fights by the mob boss called Mr. Fixer. Really stupid name, by the way. Come on, dog, you can do better than that. I almost feel like the TV show handles him dealing with having to do it just a little better than the comic.
How's it look?
It's red. It's really red.
Can I? The thing about red, I can't tell how much you're bleeding.
Who says I'm even gonna get hit?
We're Murdocks. We get hit a lot.
Yeah. Guess we do.
But we get up. Right, Dad? We always get up.
This scene is so nice, and it provides the little context for the scene in the beginning where Matt was talking about the Murdocks to the father. And Jack realizing why he has to do what he does is also a really nice touch. We then have another scene with Jack calling a friend to bet all the money on him winning the fight and to deposit the money in Matt's bank account.
Hey, it's Jack.
Hey, Jack.
Too late to change it?
You can change it.
Good. All on me. Win by knockout.
You sure?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. Listen, you gotta do this quick. Cash out the second creel hits the mat. Don't wait. Okay, get a pen.
All right. All right, got it.
You're gonna take the money down to Lloyd Wagner at M&R Credit Union. Get it deposited into account number 004-82-56882.
Account's in your name?
No, none under my name. It's under Matthew Murdock.
Matthew, got it.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Ed. You're gonna want to lay low for a couple days after.
Can I do anything for you?
Nah, don't worry about me. I got it covered.
Preparing for what he knows is coming, he then calls a woman who was unnamed but seemed to have a connection with Jack previously. But with enough hints and my amazingly high IQ, I could gather up that this was most likely Matt's mother.
Hi, not here. Leave a message.
Hey, it's me. I'm about to go do something. Well, I'm about to go be me. You know better than anybody that doesn't always go so well. I don't know how this is gonna go, but if I were a betting man, Maddie's gonna need you. More than ever. Look after him, okay? And I know what I'm asking here. He's a good kid. He sure as hell didn't get that from me. So, it's better this way. Just once. I want Maddie to hear people cheer for his old man.
I'm thinking my boy is out there in the audience, and I'm thinking about how I told him about one thing worth a damn. I told him to never give up. Never. It's time I showed him his dad may be a loser, but he's no quitter. Fiction really peaked with Daredevil, bro. Like, real talk. Jack and Matt have a really nice father and son dynamic. It's amazing. It's the 4th round. Both men are tired and sluggish. One man punches, the other man blocks, throws a hook, and one falls down. And battling Jack Murdock is winner by knockout. With certain people watching in the background of the stadium, Jack leaves, knowing what's coming. At the end, through the blood, toothless, he throws the fixer a young man's grin. At the end, it's mercy. The end of issue 1 of Men Without Fear ends with Jack dying at the hands of the fixer. Really, really sad moment. I almost cried, but I didn't, so whatever. We start with the gym. The lights go out. Come on, big guy. Don't be afraid. Here, I'll lose the bat if it makes you feel better. Matt goes after everyone involved in his father's murder. Something Stick does not take well. He eventually chases down the fixer and follows him into the subway. But instead of Matt beating him to death, he dies from a heart attack. Next is one of my favorite moments. Matt finds and attacks Angelo, one of the fixer's right-hand man, in a strip club, I think. I never know what these things are called, but I'm gonna just call it a strip club. And when he attacks Angelo, all the women there start jumping him, and he loses control of the situation. In this moment, he kicks one of the women out of the window. Matt thrashes. She doesn't scream. Instead, she prays to God. Then there's a crunch of bone and the splatter of blood across the pavement. She's dead, and Matt killed her. This moment sticks with Matt for the rest of the story and has one of the biggest impacts on him. And it's really, really nice to see. He runs to the gym and screams out for Stick, but there's no answer. We fast forward a year to Columbia University with Matt and Foggy. Foggy's getting bullied by a boy named Brad, and I swear it's either Brad, Jake, or some other white boy name they give to these bullies. So Matt ties him up, butt naked, and leaves him in the cold and tells him to leave Foggy alone. Now, I didn't have to mention this at all, but I thought it was funny, so I did. Matt has a really underrated sense of humor. But anyway, the next day, Brad comes up to him and says, "I apologize for riding you so hard." And I don't know why I died laughing the first time I read this. It's just such an odd choice of words. Another night falls, and once again, Matt Murdock finds himself coming alive when he should just be getting sleepy. It wasn't the television that kept him awake. Foggy's snoring could raise the dead, and you get used to it. He changes the tune. Nobody can sleep through that. No use kidding himself. It's not the snoring. It's nothing inside the room. It's outside. Everywhere outside. It's the wind and everything it carries and everything it touches. It charges off the ocean, fierce, bitter cold. It rattles the antenna and shakes power lines and leaves swirling snow in its wake. It rears down concrete canyons and brittle branches clatter in combat. Surrendering winter leaves that rustle and skitter like fairies, begging Matt to join the dance. The city never sleeps. Down the street, warmth and kindness to a shivering soul. Music from car radios in hundreds of different languages. Dogs yip and bark and whine. One howls, celebrating the night. and before he even gave it a thought, Matt joins the celebration. This is most likely my favorite peak ever, and I know this is high praise, but looking into it, it's so amazing. Night is a time for relaxation, and the mind is most active at night, and everything just looks more beautiful. It's a rather simple but amazing panel. During that run at night, he sees a girl and tries to chase her, loses her, and almost gets arrested for running on rooftops at night. The next day, he sees the girl at school and hops in her car. A really great decision. Really, really great decision. She drives them to a mountain cliff or edge, I don't know. We're close to the edge, Matt Murdock. One step from the end. This is where we belong. Always on the brink. And then she jumps off. Now, Electra is probably the most controversial part of this story from what I've seen, but I think her writing is amazing in this story. Her Daredevil personality, pun intended, provides a great parallel to Matt, and they also fuck like an issue later, but whatever. It was kind of heavily implied that she had some romantic interest in him, so it doesn't really matter. Whether it be curiosity or, as she said, that they're two of a kind, it doesn't really matter. Another complaint that I see is that it's inconsistent with Miller's other representations of her, but Man Without Fear is supposed to be a Daredevil origin and an outlier story, so it kind of makes sense why. And he wrote this after his initial run on Daredevil. I personally see no problem with it, but if you have a problem with it, then I can kind of understand. We then cut to a mob boss meeting after everyone leaves, and we get the coldest introduction to Daredevil's main villain. He will rule the city as the Lord of Crime, the Kingpin. Skipping a bit ahead to save you some time, a girl is kidnapped by some of Kingpin's lackeys and they hold her for ransom. The parents, after the phone call, are obviously devastated. We're going to do exactly what they say. We're at their mercy. There's no one who can help us. This is one of my favorite, and I know this is getting old, but this is one of my favorite splash pages ever. It's so cold. With the rain, Matt is wearing a suit for some reason. I don't really know or care why because it looks cool. But long story short, the lackeys who kidnapped the girl got cold feet and tried to wiggle their way out, but were killed by Kingpin's right-hand man. We then found out that it's not just one girl, it's multiple children. The girl, Mickey, starts singing and the other children follow. No one can hear their calls except one man. A man wearing all black holding a nightstick. Two men outside the building are talking. Sometimes you gotta lay the law down. Good, you know? One says. Matt swoops in, one down, then the next, then another, and another, and another. Listen to music and there's no telling what you might miss. Down goes another, and down goes another. This show took influence from this one. In the first episode, Matt saves women from being trafficked in this same exact costume. Make no sound. Concentrate. Concentrate. Down goes many. Over and over, there's no one left to hit. The man that killed the lackeys from before takes Mickey to an abandoned warehouse, and Matt enters and the killer asks who he is, and Matt says, "Call me Daredevil." The man shoots another bullet and Matt deflects it and it goes straight through his head. After a while, Matt sits in the rain atop a roof and he laughed. Matt couldn't leave New York if he wanted to. Daredevil. He hated that name. He wanted to shove it down their throats, and now he wears it like a badge. Let all the bullies know, all of them, the kind that uses knives and guns, and the kind that uses money, have an enemy, Daredevil. The costume's probably a good idea. He sewed it himself. But only God knows what it looks like. After I read Man Without Fear, it instantly became one of my favorite pieces of fiction ever, and I'm really glad I got to make a video on it because I initially wasn't planning on making one. Daredevil is probably the second, or maybe even tied with Spider-Man, most relatable character I've ever seen in my life. It's really moving to see how he deals with his situation, and it's really nice representation as, you know, Marvel really didn't have any when Daredevil was made. But thank you for watching. This has been the Daredevil video essay that I've been doing for 2 days straight with no sleep. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you have a good day. Remember, read Daredevil, watch Daredevil, and drink water. This has been Wise Hat.